Assalamu alaikum. Thank you all for joining this evening. I hope you're enjoying your wonderful, delicious sandwiches. It is such a gift to be with all of you here this evening. And I don't say that lightly. I know we have so much going on in our lives. We have work, we have commotion, we have traffic. The fact that you are here this evening is a gift. This is a blessing. We're all overstretched, we're overstimulated, and we have emotionally saturated lives. The fact that we're choosing to gather is an act of healing in itself. Because truthfully, we don't always have the time. We don't always have the time to gather or to take the permission to be here for ourselves. You hear me okay? A little bit higher. How about now? Now? Okay, wonderful. Truthfully, we don't always have the time to make space for ourselves, right? There's ups and there's downs. I am not here tonight as somebody who has everything sorted out. I'm here this evening as someone who is still struggling, but is here to share with you their own journey. So allow me to begin by first painting a picture. You drive into the employee parking lot. You're already mentally bracing the day that is going to be coming ahead of you. As you pass by the emergency room lobby, you can notice that there are 60 to 70 people waiting. Can you hear me okay? No. Now, can we hear me okay? Okay. Now, can you hear me okay? Okay, we'll move forward. There must be 60 to 70 people waiting in the emergency room windows already, so I'm already seeing this. The inside is already full. There are about 60 beds in the emergency room. This means that it is already at full capacity. There is no room to slow down. You haven't even clocked in yet, but the weight of the day is already presenting itself. You walk in, you receive your assignments. There are 4 patients you are in charge of this evening, each one carrying their very own sense of pain. In one room, there is a woman who is having some vague abdominal pain and bloating. She drove for several hours to be seen, hoping for some answers. In report, you hear she does not know yet what is going on. You know it is a malignancy. It is a potentially and has all the picture tail signs of ovarian cancer. She doesn't even know this yet. In the next room, there's an elderly man, positive for COVID. He is currently on the sepsis protocol. He is on oxygen. He is stable for now. However, at any given moment, this entire thing could change. Every breath is with borrowed time. In the third room, there is a mental health emergency, a patient in the middle of a manic episode. Medications he's been off of, sleep deprived, agitated, and volatile. You are a small statured woman. He is a large, loud, and escalating individual. Security is on scene. However, you're rattled. You wonder, am I safe? Will this escalate? In the last room, there is a woman, an elderly woman, with a severe urinary tract infection. She is at the space of getting delirium. Her neighbors found her roaming around the neighborhood and brought her in. Her family is scattered across the country. She's been having phone calls coming in from different family members, all checking in on her status. She's a fall risk. She doesn't even recognize where she is. And all you can think is, who takes care of her? You would think in these moments filled with vulnerability, with human need, that you would feel something. But instead, you feel numb. You move task by task, you administer medications, you document what is necessary. However, there is still something missing. You're detached, you're faded. You're not able to offer soft words, the small talk, the hand-holding, the deep humanly acts of care. Not because you don't want to, but because there is nothing left to give. And it doesn't end when you clock out. This here is where my burnout began. When I'd get home, there was no break. As the eldest daughter, I felt a constant, unspoken pressure to manage, to fix, to coordinate, to be what I now call the chaos coordinator of the home life. And at the same time, I was entering an infancy of marriage, still learning, still adjusting, still navigating what it means to build a home with another person. That too came with its own emotional demands, new vulnerabilities and new storms. So now imagine this, 3 layers, the heaviness of the ER, the invisible labor of family dynamics, the sacred yet sensitive transition into married life, and a body that is tired, a heart that is numb, and a soul that is overstretched. This is where I found myself. And I know I am not alone. It is the way that we snap at our loved ones, the way that we detach ourselves from our friends, the way we stop recognizing ourselves in the mirror. And that is why we're here this evening. Tonight, we're going to be checking in, not the different boxes, checking them off. I am not going to offer you 5 self-care tips that you already have seen online. It's about telling the truth. It's about looking burnout in the face and understanding it from a clinical, from an emotional, from an energetic, and from an Islamically spiritual perspective. So what we'll be discussing is what burnout truly looks like and how it impacts your nervous system, your relationships, your faith, how emotional intelligence and workplace toxicity can affect your ability to stay connected, how energy becomes unbalanced, and why healing involves the mind, the body, and the soul, and how our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had modeled steadiness in the face of grief, exhaustion, betrayal, and trauma. Because we know he didn't survive just storms. He showed us how to walk through them. So if you're feeling scattered, tired, disconnected, or emotionally numb, this space will be for you. So we'll go ahead and begin with our first segment on burnout. Now, burnout is not something that just happens, right? You don't just wake up and you're burnt out. It is something that gradually occurs. It is essentially like little pieces that will chip away. First, it's going to start off with, I had a rough day. I had a rough shift. I had a rough week. And slowly, time escapes you, and it's been a rough month. And eventually, you stop and you realize you don't even know what it feels like to feel rested. Our Prophet, peace be upon him, taught us that every part of us has rights over us, right? Our body, our soul, our relationships. But what happens when you spend too much time caring for others and you forget to care for yourself? Some early signs of burnout. Early signs can include waking up tired even if you've slept for 7 to 8 hours. You're dreading work, not because you don't like what you do, but because of the environment that you're in. You're feeling irritable, short-tempered, frustrated. You stop doing things that you enjoy because you feel as though doing those things that you enjoy actually cause you to feel like that's work in itself. You become hyper efficient at things you do. Right? You become hyper focused and emotionally unavailable. You lose that sense of being present. Now, these signs do not mean that you are weak. These signs simply mean that you are human. And again, our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he showed us that he could pause, that he would go to the cave of Hira and spend time in solace, to pause, to reset. And that tells us that we also can allow ourselves to pause and to reflect. What occurs when burnout stays unmanaged is these symptoms start to physically manifest within our bodies. So there are 5 major ways that chronic stress and depletion will present themselves inside of your body. The first way is going to be through cardiovascular strain. Right? So when we are overworked, we're consistently working under pressure, our body will stay in a fight and flight response. What this can lead to is things like elevated blood pressure. It can lead to cardiac arrhythmias. It can lead to constricted blood vessels. And over time, what will happen is you will predispose yourselves to having prolonged arrhythmias, or what is called atrial fibrillation. Other things is more longer-term issues, such as cardiovascular disease, atherosclerosis, hypertension, and this is just the beginning wakes of this. Symptoms you may begin to notice with prolonged stress and not taking care and reflecting upon yourself will be a pounding heart rate, right? Feeling this when you're even seated, anxiety that's caused from those palpitations, tension migraines. You may even feel flushed or dizzy after having really stressful days. Think about this, reflect. Have you ever felt that? Sitting in the parking lot after work, driving home? Where are you? What is going on with your heart? Chronic stress also will lead you to having hormonal imbalances. And hormonal imbalances play such a huge factor in many parts of our lives. So some of these hormones can include insulin. It can include your cortisol levels, right, which is your stress hormone. Estrogen levels for us women. Testosterone levels for males. Thyroid hormone dysfunction. All of this can start to actually physically affect us, right, when we have long-term hormonal dysregulation. So something that can occur for women is really, really painful and irregular menstrual cycles. Right? It starts to affect your fertility. How popular is IVF nowadays? And think about what has been ongoing for the last several decades. We've lived in this overproductive culture that's now physically affecting us. Furthermore, you can have weight gain, specifically in that midsection area, and that is stress holding in space in your body. You also can have low energy levels, inadequate sleep because of this, sensitivity to the cold or the heat, hair loss, skin changes, right? Metabolic problems that start to occur when you have insulin resistance, putting us at risk for diabetes or prediabetes. Now, all of these are signs that your body is trying to balance and cope with it being under constant pressure, constant stress, burnout. Think about it. Have you ever noticed energy level changes with your metabolism, work, stress? So many of this is ongoing, and we may not pinpoint it till we have those severe physical changes. Just today, I was talking to a colleague who shared with me some ongoing issues through her work. And she shared with me, a young woman in her 30s, was hospitalized for a hypertensive crisis. It's quite terrifying how young we are dealing with these physical symptoms that may not actually come out in life until much, much later. Typically, these kind of issues are much later in life. If you're in your 30s dealing with hypertensive crisis, meaning she had to be put onto some kind of an IV medication to sustain her blood pressure, it's quite terrifying. What is going on with this constant pressure, this constant need to be productive, hustle culture, we call it. But at the cost of what? At the cost of our bodies, right? And we talk about that amana, our body, the rights our body has over us. When we are constantly pushing and pushing and pushing, especially as younger people who are, trying to climb up these corporate ladders, gain certain titles, we forget what we do to ourselves. Our body will keep performing at the cost of many different areas, many different health, many different systems inside of us suffering. Now, I want to also shift into sleep. Think about sleep disturbances. When you're overstimulated, you have projects due, you have deadlines, you have been on a 3-week work stretch with no days off. What's going on? You're not sleeping, right? We're not sleeping. What's going on when you don't sleep? Sleep is so important for your gut health. Now, I don't know if any people know about this, but your gut is extremely active when you are sleeping, right? It's called peristalsis. This is the flow of everything metabolizing in your colon. When you get inadequate sleep, you're bloated, your gut flora is off balance, you're going to feel fragmented, and that consistently will affect you. Your sleep is disturbed where you're waking up, maybe you're sleeping for a couple hours, you're waking up in the middle of the night. Or you're getting sleep, but it's not that dark, that deep REM sleep that we all need. So when that's not occurring, right, we have brain fog. We have mental disturbances. We're anxious. We're irritable. All of this is going to leave us feeling wired. We're becoming caffeine dependent. So think about when you are relying solely on caffeine, what that is doing to our cardiovascular system, right? I touched a bit on arrhythmias. We have so much of this ongoing. I have a story about a patient that I took a couple years ago. I walked into the emergency room, and he must have been 28 or 29, if I recall correctly. He walked in, very young of age, right? Very young of age. Walks in. His heart rate was in the 140s or something quite erotic. He's hyperventilating. He's in severe chest pain. And we're like, okay, what's going on? You're probably having, a panic attack. Given his age, this is what we're thinking. However, we still ran an EKG on him where we check out your heart rhythm to see what's ongoing. This individual was having a full-blown heart attack at 28 or 29 years old. Turns out he worked at one of the big FANG tech companies and was completely overworking himself. And his heart gave out at 28 years old. It is terrifying of what can happen to us when we don't pay attention to us. When we're like, we're young, we can keep going. No, we're not just young. We have to stop and pause and recollect ourselves. Caffeine will do so many detriments to us. So it's important to watch out for how much we're having and realize, do these deadlines, do these titles truly mean that we give our bodies away for it? No. Brain fog and cognitive function. When we're consistently multitasking, consistently worrying about responding to emails, right? We live in this era where we have to respond to every person. Well, it's working hours, we must respond, sure. But once it's 5 or 5:30, do we really need to respond? Is it really life and death? No, it's not. Chances are it is not life and death. When you're constantly pushing yourself to stay efficient in your work, you will start to forget tasks that are actually important to you, like things that you normally remember, right? Because you're so hyper-focused on one area. You will have trouble focusing in conversations. You'll have a hard time making decisions when it comes to small things. We live in this blessed place where we have so many options of what to eat and drink. You don't even know what to eat and drink anymore. It's completely over your head. Small decisions will cause you so much stress and distress. And these things are all painting a picture that our cognitive load is overloaded. Think about this. This week, this month, have you checked out? You've worked so hard through the week, and now it's 6 o'clock and I'm just gone. That is our mental cognitive overload occurring. Other things, when all of this is taking place, you can have emotional depletion. When we have chronic exposure, depending on what we're doing for a living, especially if it's in high pressure environments. I work in healthcare, so I see this where eventually it wears us down. Eventually it wears down that emotional resilience that we had built up. Emotional exhaustion can take place when it's essentially like you've been running, and running a marathon, and that finish line never actually comes. That's what happens when we're constantly just giving. You witness pain, you witness suffering, you witness loss. Earlier, I painted a picture of what my normal shifts would look like. But I was in a place where I was numb, so I wasn't even feeling with the people and the loved ones of someone's loved ones I was taking care of. Now, does this not mean that you are a bad person because you're not feeling? What it means is that you are spent. Your emotions are spent. Now, as a holistic healthcare nurse, I know that there's so much more than just emotions that are involved with this, right? Because I look at everything from a mind, body, soul perspective. I realize these things going on are also energetic. Your body does not differentiate between what is an emotional trauma or what is a physical trauma. So when you've been carrying too much emotional stories, that will start to break us down. So one of the most important pieces and terrifying pieces to burnout is emotional numbness. That is a very scary space to be in. Numbness is not us being cold-hearted. It is that emotional overload I just mentioned. That's what's going on. Your nervous system becomes so overran that it's like that circuit breaker just been flipped. What happens then after that space is what's called compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue is the loss of caring in itself. This happens, you become numb. What do I do now? You're emotionally distant. You're not even feeling for what you're doing anymore. And then you feel this sense of guilt. Am I alone in this? Am I terrible at what I do? Do I belong in this career that I've spent years building? You will start to ask yourself these questions. What happens though? I want to shift into this space, a different space now. What happens if it's not that burnout piece that I mentioned? What if you are caring? You care about what you're doing. Is that actually burnout then, at that individual level? Or is it a toxic workspace that is causing this, where you're feeling dismissed and unseen? A toxic work environment can take place from different levels, right? When we talk about this, we think about, okay, is it I walk in and I'm being pinpointed and being discriminated against right in front of my face? It may not be that. Typically, this is very subtle. It's not a huge blowout. It's walking into the workroom or the shared office space, and everybody gets greeted by an individual or individuals by name, and you are seated there and you're left out. You're not even mentioned. It is speaking up during a staff meeting and bringing up your ideas and your proposals, and it's washed off. It's like you didn't even get to share your idea. And a week later, someone brings your idea and represents it, and they're applauded for it. They're given the resources to facilitate that project. You ask for help. Hey, I need help on this project. Can I have a second set of eyes on this? Oh, I'm at capacity right now, but maybe let's circle back in a month or two. That can be that toxic work culture taking place. You feel like you're always the one giving. You're the team player. Ask me, I'm available. Come. I'm happy to be your second set of eyes. I'm happy to collaborate with you. When you're asking for help, crickets. Now, these things are not minor things happening. You can feel as though your psychological safety is being affected. You start to question your worth. You start to make yourself small. You start to rehearse the words before you actually say them. Do I speak up in this meeting? Because I'm going to be dismissed anyway. And then when you finally do speak up, you're questioning, should I do this? Your voice is stuttering. We start to shrink ourselves, we start to hide, and we don't thrive at overdoing that. Right? This is the quiet cost of workplace toxicity. Some solutions. So we're going to encounter this in different spaces, and it may not always be work, right? Maybe it's in a community setting. Maybe it's in a family scenario. What can we do for this? Look for allies. Look for somebody in the room who meets you with a smile. Because just because 2 or 3 people in the workplace environment are not supportive of you does not mean everybody else is not. If it's an HR-related situation, start to document those occurrences. It's important to do that for our own safety and well-being, especially in this time and era that we live in, that if it's not documented in an objective manner, it doesn't hold any value. So document things in an objective manner. And then realize that it's important that you're speaking about your concerns in a very respectful way, right? Where you're not bringing another individual down, but you're stating the facts of what had happened. If you're being pinpointed in meetings in a public forum and it's consistently directed at you, hold that to that objective level. There's so much around people who belittle you in work settings. It's critical that we note those things down and stand up for yourself. Know that you belong, right? You are here for a reason. Your credentials, your career experience, you've earned your seat. We've all earned our seats. So don't let the fear of a bully or bullies in the workplace take away from where you belong. It's that shift of headspace that is so critical for us. Reframe that. I know it is so challenging, especially when you're in the brink of a bully who is saying that your work isn't good enough. You wouldn't be able to uphold that project the same way that your colleague could have. But the fact that you came up with that idea and they are pushing forward with it means that you belong. You have that worth. Do not make yourself small. Stand up for what you worked for. Tell yourself, and a practice that I've embedded is telling myself that I belong here. My seat is here. These positive words that reassure me, and I shift that mindset. It's so simple to go down and make ourselves small. Stay silent and hiding. Don't allow yourselves to do that. And if you do, forgive yourself for it, right? Allah is ever so forgiving towards us. So we can forgive ourselves too. For, again, feeling, for being human. I'm going to shift into this space of kind of reading the room, what is called emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is something you can build upon over the course of years, but it's a self-awareness practice that is incredibly important for us to build upon. Now, emotional intelligence, what it means is that you are aware of what you're feeling and why you're feeling it. It means knowing how your emotions will affect others. It's a soft skill, but it is also a very incredible skill. Let me give you some scenarios. So think about this. We know if we're going to be walking into a proposal presentation, a budgeting session. For me, if I'm going to be walking into a discussion with a patient that I know is going to be quite an attention-based conversation, what I know is I first have to pause. Because what happens when my emotions are dysregulated, things will come out very differently, right? It is the art of paralinguistics, the way that our tone is, the volume of our voice, the way our body, our nonverbal cues are coming off. All of this is so incredibly important, and this here is that emotional intelligence that you can build upon. A coworker snaps at you. Immediately, as survival instincts, I want to snap back at you. I'm not going to give you my other cheek. We don't do that. Again, though, take a moment. So quickly, our emotions go up, right? We feel the heat in our system immediately going. Like, I know we've all been there. But take that moment and ask yourself, just take a breath, let it out, and then start again and ask, what is that person carrying today? That is emotional intelligence. Ask yourself, why could they have reacted like that? Many times, it is not you that they are upset at, it is the situation at hand. We may not be in agreement with how the delivery of this project is. That's what that is. It is not an attack on you. In the clinical setting and healthcare setting, very oftentimes I'll see physicians speak to one another about what they think is most important and how a patient's clinical presentation should be addressed. And they don't attack one another, they never do. It is from my professional lens and my professional lens. This is what we think the patient should do first. That is emotional awareness, not letting it be a personal attack, rather a clinical situation, the matter at hand. So when you are overwhelmed, take that pause, and if you need to, if it's a decision that needs to be made, just make that tiny boundary adjustment. I need 5 minutes. Can we come back to that this afternoon? Let me sleep on that. I'll get back to you tomorrow morning. Because that can give you that space to process everything. This is the difference between being reactive and reacting. It's responding with that sense of consciousness. And the first step to emotional regulation and emotional awareness and intelligence is that regulation piece. Regulating before connecting and getting settled firm on a decision. Think about these nonverbal cues you've probably seen with people you've been around. It is legs shaking, voice trembling. Sometimes people are hitting something, a pen. What are they doing? Those are signs of them letting out their emotions. What they also could be going on is maybe they're agitated, maybe they're anxious, nervous, folded arms, clenched jaw. micro expressions on somebody's face, right? Facial expressions say a lot. Just this week, I was in a very interesting conversation, and the individual in front of me, we had a disagreement that's been ongoing for several months. We finally had an official sit down together. The individual I had picked up because I've been working on this journey of becoming very emotionally intelligent of where I'm at and regulating my own emotions so I can internalize them as I'm in the midst of a matter, a disagreement. The individual shaking their leg just completely gone. The face, when speaking, the emotions on their face were just all over the place. And so simple to read. They were so upset, so anxious, so nervous. And when the words started to come out, and I was being pointed at, I was being told that you are this, you are this, you are this, my past self, who did not have this emotional regulation and emotional intelligence, would have become very reactive. My character is being attacked in my face. I want to jump out. But rather, I took the high road, took a moment, I sat there, and I let them say what they needed to say. So I did not want to come to a place where I reacted out of anger, but rather let everybody else witness in the room what was ongoing, what had been ongoing. This is emotional awareness. Now, it is not making yourself small, but many times it is allowing kind of nature to take its course, especially in corporate settings where we have to be so mindful of how we behave and how we move. It's us listening to ourselves and allowing others to witness what is at firsthand. Because when we create this space for emotional awareness, we don't just become better professionals, we become better humans. What I allowed myself to do in that space was to be a better human, yet by not frustratingly jumping out. Now, what can also happen when burnout continues spiraling is we feel disconnected from our purpose. As I mentioned earlier, I felt burnt out. I lost my why. Of course, I work in healthcare. We're supposed to all care. But I was so at a crisp that I felt numb. Is this all there is going to be? Do I even recognize who I am? I work so hard for this. I work at such a prestigious place. People want to be here. I feel guilty. I'm sure many of us can ask ourselves these questions in the work that we do. But realize and give yourselves this grace. Forgive yourself. You are human. We can feel. We were created to live with meaning and purpose. There is also this sense of energetic imbalance that happens. When we look at nature, if you look at the seasons, when it is cold out, and it's about to become cold out, the fall, all of the trees are losing their leaves. Right? And then by winter, everything is kind of at its bones, right? It's very skeleton looking like. You see the roots of the tree. That's what we see. Because it is cold, and the earth is preserving itself. Nature is preserving. And then slowly summer comes around, and it is very warm outside. Right? And the beautiful flowers are out, the birds are chirping, there's fruits again. This is nature balancing itself, that energetic balance that exists. When somebody has misplaced emotional dysregulation, if they're frustrated in their lives in any which way, sometimes we are on the short end of that stick, where that energy has seeked balance in another space. It's coming out, anger, frustration, it's coming out in another space. This can happen because nature will always try to find balance. When your body is at overcapacity, your body is trying to seek balance, right? That is why you're feeling sluggish. I talked about those hormonal imbalances. I talked about pushing ourselves to our cardiovascular limits. I talked about not sleeping and becoming irritable. That is your body trying to find balance. We call that homeostasis. Somehow, some way where your body will find balance. Another good image of this is a fever. When you have a fever, what's going on internally, right? Your core body temperature is high, right? So usually over 100, 101, 102 degrees. So you are diaphoretic, you're sweating, you're shivering. These are mechanisms your body is taking to come back to balance, to find homeostasis in some which way. it's so important for us to realize that our body will always seek this. Energy will always try to find some form of coming back to nature's alignment. When all of this is occurring, do not be upset at yourself because you're not broken. You're not broken. You're simply energetically fragmented. Your healing will not begin with you becoming more productive, right? That hyper productivity. Your healing begins with permission to yourself, permission for you to pause, to feel yourself, and to realign with your own purpose. And that is us coming back to steadiness. I'm going to come back to our incredible prophet, peace be upon him, because he has walked through so many storms and he never lost his center. Right? We know that our prophet had grieved very deeply. We know he worked tirelessly. We know that he led with this unwavering compassion, and yet he never lost faith. He never lost sight. He paced in his life. He paced. There was never a rush, right? There are so many incredible stories that we know of about how it would take years for anything to actually happen. But he stayed steadfast on his journey. He did not lose sight of his purpose. He allowed himself to feel emotion, to cry, to grieve, to love. He didn't overextend. He didn't overperform. He was present. He took time in solitude. He allowed himself to love purely, to set necessary boundaries, to stay rooted and grounded. And so I say to you as well, if you have been hurting, you are not alone. If you've been silent, know that your truth matters. Know that if you've forgotten your purpose, you will return to it. Burnout is not the end of the journey. It is simply a warning sign, a flag. We can come back around. We can find ourselves again. If you've been numb, you can come back to feeling again. When we allow ourselves that grace to feel, we will feel again. So I hope this was not a lecture, but a minor reminder of the moment of stillness that is so important for us to return to our very own truths. That we were never meant to just keep on going and going and going. We were meant to hold ourselves to the same amana that we are supposed to hold our bodies to, that right that it has over us. So may we find this steadfastness inside of us again. May we hold ourselves with gentleness. May we give ourselves grace. And may we remember that healing is possible. So I hope you all have taken something away from this evening. Are there any questions? Yes.
You mentioned, I'll be paraphrasing, but you mentioned like when you're in a situation where you're being undermined, attacked in the subtle ways, and the way you address it is to be very factual and not type of person. Do you have an example that we might know of, and if possible, like a script even of like what that would look like?
Yeah, totally. So, absolutely. She is asking, I mentioned about when you are being attacked, if in a workplace setting. How do you objectively write this out, or what would you say? Essentially, that's the question. So I'll take, for example, the encounters that I have been told about and encounters that I experienced. What you would do is you would separate your emotion from the factor, because unfortunately, an emotion is a subjective feeling. You talk about the situation at hand. If this was a public setting, a public meeting, and in the meeting, your name is pointed out. So-and-so, you did this. And it's a direct attack almost onto you, right? You're being singled out. That is an objective point. You have witnesses who have witnessed you being reprimanded on camera or in a public forum. That is an objective situation. And as we all know, when you're having any of these meetings, if anything is not directly for the group or said in an objective manner, that is a direct attack on a person. So that right there is an objective way you could state that. You could keep note of, bring it up to your leadership. It's always best to practice to go up the appropriate chain of commands. So generally that is whoever our direct leader is, our direct supervisor is. Note that down. Note down that occurrence. In this meeting, on this date, this individual pointed me out in front of 25 other people. And it was directed at me. Objectives. Does that answer your question? Other questions? I think something else to keep in mind too is when these situations are ongoing, we can feel like our self-worth is being questioned. Right? You wonder, do I belong? Am I really in the right space? There are two things that can happen to us, right? And many of us will cope in different ways. One of the ways that some of us will cope is I'm going to go make myself really tiny, never come off mute, keep my camera off all the time. I'm going to call out. Maybe I'm going to take a leave. I'm going to start to apply to other jobs because this is not doing it anymore. And it's not the work, right? It's not, I love what I do. I love taking care of the patients I take care of. I know that I make a difference in someone's life. It's the camaraderie, it's the team that is making it insufferable to be here. Don't let that be the reason that you leave the purpose that you're leaving behind. When you're feeling this, it's so important to fight for and stand up for yourself. It's so easy for us to take the high to just leave. Don't leave, especially if you know you've worked really hard to get to where you are. Many of us, are trying to move into different places, different sectors, different workspaces. And when you get there, you're like, I've gotten here. It's going to be all dandelions and flowers from here on out. And in reality, that's not the truth. In every space you work in, you're always going to deal with individuals who are going to make you feel as though you're not at that certain level. And they do that because there's bullies. Bullies exist from the playground and through the rest of your life. Bullies do this because they have misplaced energy, right? I talked about energy and how it's going to follow you. So if we talk about childhood bullies. Childhood bullies, as we know, so much clinical research has come out on studies of children. When they're bullying in the playground, it is because their home life is unacceptable. So things are going on. So they're trying to find joy. They're trying to find themselves to just feel better in some which way. So they're putting somebody else, children, down in school, in the playground. Unfortunately, that behavior doesn't resolve. It continues onward in life. Individuals who usually are promoting that toxicity, that tension in the workplace, creating psychological unsafety, are unhappy in other which ways in their lives. And so they're projecting that in other spaces. Now, this does not just end in the workplace. It does not just end in the workplace. It can continue in family dynamics. Right? How many of us have experienced that in family dynamics? I'm sure a light bulb is going off. It's energy mismatched. I'm feeling small at home. I'm feeling small from my family, so I'm going to project over here. Something that happens in healthcare is, and as a nurse, right, we have what nurses call eating their young. Eat their young. Eating their young is when senior nurses, veteran nurses, don't want to help the baby nurses coming in, freshly out of nursing school. I recall when I was in the emergency room, and it's a very traumatic place to work, let me tell you. There's so much ongoing. And they don't teach you in school how to go from writing and reading and the stimulation labs, right? They don't teach you how to now apply that physically when there's so much going on in front of you. They don't teach, there's a disconnect that occurs. And it doesn't matter how long your internship was, it was very different because at that time, you're operating at a student capacity. You're not operating at, I'm licensed and I need to defend and protect my license that I worked so hard for. That's a completely different setting. And I recall having a chaotic day in the emergency room. I must have been a nurse for about 9 weeks at the time. So I just fresh. And there was this woman, and something was very off with her. Off as in, I knew there was more to the story than what was just the clinical presentation. She was bleeding. We couldn't tell where the bleeding was coming from. We thought it was a gastrointestinal bleed. Gastrointestinal bleeds can spiral very quickly. A lot of blood loss, they can go into shock. And I'm going in and I'm explaining I need the doctor's help, and no one was taking me seriously. This was very frustrating because her vital signs were normal-ish when she walked in. Or not walked in, when she was ambulanced in. But slowly it was kind of escalating. Things were just trickling down. And I brought it up to the physician. I brought it up to my charge nurse. And no one paid attention to me. Oh, they're fine. No, their blood pressure is like 145 over, I can't recall the number anymore, but they're fine. Because of relax. Move on to the next one. Like there's another patient, go take care of them. Something in me told me that it was not going to be okay. And all of a sudden her blood pressure's tanking. I'm looking and I'm pulling we have an emergency bell button, and the charge nurse shows up. He shows up. Well, do you need anything? Yeah, I need help. I need someone to get me blood. I don't know where the transfusion blood supplies are. My first time, no one showed me any of this. And he's like, well, Pakeeza, if you can't handle it, the emergency room is not for you. Nurse is eating your young. Who knows what was going on in his life where he projected that on towards me, but I will always remember these moments, these grievances, we can call them, in life. This is energetic balance happening. Of course, I didn't take these moments personally because I've learned over time, but energy will balance itself out. And so when these moments happen, does that mean that I was incapable? No, that means I was beyond capable because I cited it before the fact that something was going to happen. Do not ever allow anyone's pressures, their own inhumility to take away from your own self-worth. Questions?
I wonder though, I mean, I agree there's always going to be flaws in workplace or institutions, but I kind of have a two-part question. Where is that line when you know every place has its flaws and you have to navigate it, and then I just believe this is too much for me to handle? And then the second part is, yes, I know you mentioned like it's not personal, but when it gets to the point where they are making attacks on you, it's getting to a point where it's like leadership and you're the position.
Yes.
I know you're saying about like it's not you per se, it's them projecting what's in their life, but it is still having an impact and affecting you. Again, kind of related to the first part, like how do you then protect yourself? Like, do you always have to be toe to toe with them? Letting them know like I'm not someone to be messed with. Do you always have like a paper trail, like hey, for our conversation, just like letting them know, like documenting. I share this because, and tell me if I'm generalizing right here, that nurses and teachers, teacher tend to attract a lot of bullies. So, especially with teachers, like it's one of the least diverse professions. It's 80% white women. And it's not diverse, and I think it's intentionally gatekeeping that diversity in terms of the teachers. So I guess if I was in a position where I left my school, principal was a Zionist, and she made my life miserable, but again, I did all those protective factors of like letting them know, like, hey, I'm documenting, this is not true what you said, this is a double standard for clients to me where I'm applying it to other people. So it's just, but it was exhausting, it was draining. It was like I can't do this anymore. So I left. Sorry, I know I answered all of it.
No. This is great. And I think you bring up a really good point because that can happen. How much can I tolerate? How much can I take the higher road, right? How many times can I possibly be the bigger person? That is definitely a question to ask. And I think we can all kind of go over this, is when that does occur, you will know, right, internally, when you have this mind, body, soul connection, you will know when enough is enough, right? It is not that you were leaving the profession of teaching. It is that you were leaving that space you worked at. That's what that was. You didn't leave the career. you still had a sense of purpose because you know you're calling us to teach. If you need to leave this space because you've done everything and it is physically detrimenting towards you, like you are agonizing going in, and it's now taking away from your ability to work. For us, when it starts to take away from patient care, we're making a potentially life-threatening mistake. This is when it's become too much and you need to transfer outward. I think all of us should be in a space where we are so emotionally aware and regulated with how we are and who we are and what our greater purpose is, that when it is time, you know you've done all of the things, right? Writing everything down, trying to have those conversations. You've done all of these factors and some time has passed and that same circle repeats itself, because that happens too, right? You had that conversation with those individuals or whatever, whoever it is, that HR meeting happens, and then 6-7 months later, it's back again. And that continuously happens. You know you've done your part, because at that point, likely it's going to start taking effect on your actual capacity to work and to do what you love to do. At that time, you need to leave. And so I think we all just have to realize when enough is enough. But it comes with that mind, body, soul kind of connection that we should have for ourselves. Because all of us probably have an incredible skill set at whatever it is that we do. Unfortunately, and this is just the unfortunate culture that we've created with productivity culture, putting organizations above our own purpose and our own means, right? That's another piece, and it's probably a very deep conversation of when we are chasing titles, when we are chasing this world will never give us anything in return, right? But when you're teaching, when you're sharing knowledge with your students, you have your purpose in this world. Your marriage is not to that school or that principal or that superintendent. You are serving to the youth. That's your purpose. Other questions? Anybody else? I haven't gotten any questions from this side. Yes.
So we talked about emotional regulation, we talked about setting up boundaries, we talked about situations where we have to objectively document stuff. At what point do you think, as an individual, during those situations, you mentioned about giving yourself a break, right? At what point do you think, as an individual, we should either sympathize with the situation or empathize? And what should be our reaction to it?
I think it'll depend on the situation, on what is presenting itself, right? Because when you sympathizing, right? Sympathizing is I can feel sorry for you, right? That is sympathizing. And then empathizing is I can feel that emotion with you. I'm going to live in this grief with you. When you want to separate, it's going to depend on what the matter at hand is. So I'm going to come back to the toxic workspace. So when we come back to the toxic workspace, if it is maybe an action that you did unknowingly, right? Sometimes we do things, right? We do things that we may not understand how it is affecting another person. Is it that maybe I walked into the room and I didn't say good morning a few times, and now those individuals think that I'm just not a team player and they're only going to say good morning to themselves and leave me out of it? And I can, in that sense, right, you can empathize because I can understand how I made somebody feel. And so I can feel for you why you no longer say good morning to me, because several occasions I have not. And I can sympathize when I just had this, for example, this discussion where this individual was yelling towards me. Their energy was so off balance, or misplacing it towards me directly. So if that is something that is occurring to you, I, in a sense, coming from my place of regularity, felt sorry for the person because they are so their life may be in such a critical space that they feel the need to project this much ruthlessness towards me. So I sympathize with you, but this is where this is. Of course, all of these situations will depend, right? There are such individual factors around it. You will just have to take each situation for what it is. But I also think it's critical that we reflect on ourselves and was there something I could have done differently, right? Because unfortunately, we only have control over our own take, right? So it's just impeccable that we just take our own actions and see how potentially we could have changed or done the situation differently. Of course, it's always important to stay objective, but it will always be situation and case by case. Other questions?
I have a question. You talk about boundaries and keeping boundaries at work. Let's say you cross the boundaries in the sense like you give too much or you work overtime a lot, and now your boss is expected that because you've done this so much. And like when you realize that and you want to stop, like what's the healthy way of stopping and like letting them know without coming off like and like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, but like I don't know.
Yeah, I love this
like
question.
I have a boundary now, or you know what I mean?
I love this question. This is a really great question. How can we stop being such a giver at work, right? Like especially if we set this expectation that, hey, I'm the one who comes in on my day off. Just let me know. Sure thing. Sure thing. Is to come at it quite slowly. I would tell you that, right? First, it will depend on, is it an email that you're sending or is this a conversation you're having? If this is I would advise you to actually have a conversation about it rather than sending an email. Because when it comes to that emotional intelligence piece, when you're writing an email, words can be, and the way I'm reading an email might be very different than how you're going to read an email, especially if I'm coming out of whatever else I just walked out of. I already might have built up emotions from that situation, and I'm going to read this. My most reliable team member is no longer willing to work. I'm going to feel a certain way, right? Like it's going to affect me. It is important to have those kinds of discussions where it's going to make an actual change and affect people on the team entirely, right? Or the workload. It's important to have those conversations in person because the paralinguistics around that. So if I explain this in a really calm, not in a high-pitched manner, but in a calm kind of tonality. I know in the past that I have been able to spend half a day on my day off to complete X, Y, and Z. I want to bring up that I have this and this going on now. I have my children's soccer games at these times, and unfortunately, I will no longer be able to commit that time. And I hope that you can understand and know that I will always be here to support in any other ways during the work week. It's as simple as that. You don't need to give in. I'm so sorry. Please know I'm still going to be here. Like you don't need to add those extra fluff factors, right? Because when you do that, you make yourself small again. Right? That's what that is. It's that people-pleasing tendencies. We make ourselves small. We don't have to do that. Just stay to the fact. And it's okay to share a tiny piece of the personal reason. You don't need to go into, I'm a mom, I have to be there to support my children. Like, we don't have to say all that. Keep it point objective. That's it. Other questions? Okay, I think that brings us essentially to a close unless there's a final question. Yes, go ahead.
I think you mentioned earlier, like your eldest daughter, married, working, imagining you're still working full time. How do you have that balance between all of that, especially in this culture where there's all about that sort of like giving it all, and I'm assuming it's obviously boundaries, but if you're gonna go that route, like I would love be very specifics on that. I know you mentioned like setting up the boss who expects more, but curious, like, how do you do that without falling in too much into like, giving yourself away from those things?
Yeah, I think this comes with practice and time. Is, of course, culturally, we never want to be disrespectful. That's a piece. That's an important piece, right? Because we always want to be respectful of families, dynamics. We don't want to hurt anyone in that capacity. But I think I come back to that space of the airplane, the oxygen in the airplane. When they're giving you that safety lecture, what do they tell you? Put the mask on the child, put the mask on yourself before the child. Right, so if I don't protect me in some which way, I'm going to be like a lost cause, right? I'm going to be numb, I'm going to be disoriented, I'm going to be irritable, all of these sorts of things. And so what I have found that I have to do is I have to make like undisturbed time for me and my projects and the things that I have going on. I'm unavailable this day. However, hey, let's get family, let's get together next weekend at this time. Let's do this, right? Or I'm available by phone call. Let me know when your next scheduled doctor's appointment is, and I would love to be there. It is asking them, and I think it comes with this open narrative that we have to have. Another piece, though, and I know I think as women and daughters, we can do this, is where we want to be the constant savior. Right? Like, let me take it on, let me do this, let me be that person for you. Is realizing that everybody is an adult, right? We all make decisions. And even our parents and our siblings and all of these people will make decisions. And they have chosen that decision, and we have to be respectful of that decision. We can advise, we can give out advice, but we cannot be over there spending hours trying to make sure they do every single thing. Because that will take away from our own mental space and our own bandwidth. And I think it comes with a fine line of understanding that boundary, right? Is I can give you so much, but I can't pick up the spoon and feed it to you also. So I'm giving you the knowledge, I can have the conversations, but they're adults. Everyone is an adult. They're going to make their decisions, and we have to just kind of accept that that's going to happen. And then when it comes to the other spaces of the boundaries, right? Like life will always be coming at us, different spaces. I personally practice the act of making sure that I always have space for myself in a day. It's come with time. It does not just like happen, right? As of my own burnout recovery story for the last couple of years, I know what I need for me. I know that I need 45 minutes for myself. I need to go on a walk. I need to do this for me. This is what I do for me. I know that on the weekends, I like to go outside. I like to go on a walk outside. I like to go to a workout class. I have this, and it is undisturbed. Nothing is going to come in and shatter that. Because I have literally set this into regimen. In the past, oh, it's okay, I'll just skip it this week. I'll skip it. But what happens, right? You skip a day, you skip a week, a month goes by, and now you feel those physical symptoms coming back out again. That mental detriment occurring. It comes gradually. Do it in pieces. And if you're unable to commit to that much time, right? I said it came with time, it came with practice. Can I give myself 20 minutes? Can I give myself 15 minutes in a day? Yes, I bet you can. Create those little spaces for you. And it's also an important narrative to keep in mind that you can share that, right? When you're wondering, if you're concerned about your parents' health, people's well-being, okay, that social connection, realizing that, hey, can we make this a family activity? Can we do if it is that it is so important for me to go outside and get into nature on the weekend, and I want to spend time with my family as well. Can we do this as a family activity, like a family walk? Yes, we could, right? It's possible to do that, but it comes with that narrative shift, having that open dialogue, that the self-care that we give to ourselves is not some like taboo situation. It's actually great for all of us to make that space for ourselves. Yeah. All right. Yes.
So when someone is trying to make changes and they're going along, they're doing the immediate changes, and then the people around them are used to the old them and not accepting it.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point you brought up. She's saying here, what happens if you are going through these changes and the people around you are not supportive of it, and they're going back to old ways, and they're bringing you down. What do? Well, again, right? Open narrative, bring it up to conversation. Why? I'm doing this for the benefit of me. Join me. Bring it up to them. I think the dialogue is what suffers. It's the dialogue. So much occurs and goes wrong because of miscommunication. Maybe the way that I said it was not well received, right? That paralinguistic. Was I coming off an emotional high when I said what I was saying? I was angry and projected to you. And then immediately you're going to shut down. Well, I don't want to join you. I don't want to. I don't care. I don't want to. That delivery is so important. How we're presenting it and where the people are, right? If they are already in an emotionally frantic space, they're not going to be they're not going to be able to receive anything either. So that comes back to that emotional intelligence, is understanding where people are to receive or not receive. And now, if you have done it, you go through it, what you thought and what you've collected, that both of you were in a good space to have these conversations, and it is still not received. Well, can I be around this individual tastefully? Because again, we have to protect our own peace, because we so easily can become so dysregulated again. And we don't want the burden of their undesires to change or whatever the reason may be to take over us. I know it's tough when we talk about boundaries, but it is important to know that, like our prophet, right? He would take time for how long, how many weeks would he be, or months sometimes he would be in the cave. That's a boundary set right there. Don't feel guilty for it. It takes time though, it takes practice. And give yourself grace with it. I really, really want to do that because we're so hard on ourselves. No, I can't do this. People are expecting this from me. No. We owe it to ourselves if it is affecting our physical being. Because again, this body is nothing. This body is just us. We owe it to our body. Right? That's that amana piece. Right? This body has rights over us. So it's so imminent on us to not let someone else's emotions or their own dysregulation affect us to that degree. Change the narrative. That's why I leave you. Yes?
This is me, When I go to work, there's a stress.
Mm.
When I stay home, there's a stress with the children because, they are in the iPhone, they have attitude. I know everything. I know they want to talk. They're isolated. So what I do to deal with it, I just go to work. You know what I mean? Because either way, this is less than this one,
Yes,
I'm dealing with adult. And when I go to work, I deal with adult. When I stay home, I deal with children, and I don't want to have children.
Yeah.
So I don't know how, I'm escaping the escape. Because where I came from, if I do something wrong, my dad will whip me. I can't whip my children, but I go to jail. You know what I mean? So this is like a stress, emotional.
Yes, it is.
You talk about working environment, talk about the, medical environment, but family.
Family dynamics are very challenging, right? And I think, I don't have experience with teenagers. I've been a teenager.
Like when you buy a car, it comes with the owner manual. But when you have children, there's no owner manual.
Yes.
You just have to.
You're just
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله